Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. One of the first things you want to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground, and typically I like to have the suspension hanging. After that, I'm going to move along to removing all of these lug covers here. We'll remove the center cover, and then we'll remove the lug nuts as well. Now let's remove all 4 of our 19mm lug nuts. I'm just going to start this back on here so I can finish removing the wheel. Let's take one of those lug nuts again, and we're going to start it on here. Now the next thing I want to do is remove my drum. To do that, I'm just going to use a hammer. I'm going to give it a couple loving bonks in this area right here, being very careful not to damage any of my lug studs along the way. Now that we have the drum out of the way, let's continue by removing the brake shoes. To do that, you're going to have to start removing some hardware. So just take a quick note of exactly how everything's located. Now I'll continue with some long nose pliers, and I'm going to grab right onto this spring right here. I'm going to draw this away from this hook. Now I can grab this off of here as well. We're going to make sure we inspect the hardware as we remove it. Now let's get the rest of this off of here. If you were to look at this, you can tell that it goes into one shoe, makes its way down and underneath this area, and then circles all the way back up to the forward shoe. To get this off of here, I'm just going to use some pliers. I'll carefully get in between this area and gently pry it away. There's one shoe. Typically, I like to give them a quick inspection just to make sure they're still in fairly good condition. I like to know how they wear. If it looks like they're worn at an angle, or maybe they're damaged in some way, it's stuff to take a note of. Now we can carefully pull this shoe down. I'm just going to swing this down and leave it hanging for now. We'll get back to this. Now we're going to start removing this right here. If you were to look underneath the wheel bearing, you're going to find an area that it rests into. I'll just carefully grab onto this. I'm going to wiggle it and lift it up and out of position. After that, we can remove it from the vehicle. We'll give it a quick inspection, make sure it's still reusable, and then we'll set it aside. Now at this point, we're going to stop taking things off of this. I know that the rearward shoe is still on here, but typically I like to leave it on for the cleaning process. I'm just going to use a nice brush, and I'm going to try to get off any of the rust or debris that I can find inside this area. Once you feel as though you have the backing plate cleaned down sufficiently, we're going to pause on that, and we're going to continue on to removing our rearward shoe. Before we go ahead and take this off, make sure you have a brand new shoe in hand. You want to make sure it's the one for this particular side of the vehicle. We'll go ahead and set this aside someplace close. The next thing we need to do is start separating the shoe from the emergency brake cable. If you were to look up in this area, you're going to find the area that we need to grab onto. And if you were to look under here, you can see the area that the cable needs to be able to slide out of. Now with that said, I'm just going to carefully grab onto this with some pliers. And now I'm just going to carefully start pulling on it like that, and then I should be able to pull it right out of there. Now we need to go ahead and put our brand new shoe inside this area. Now to put our brand new shoe on here, we're going to grab onto this area one more time, and we're going to have to slide this spring up so we can start putting the brake shoe into position. Now, if we were to swing this up into proper position, you can see the lock is sitting perfectly. Now that you have that shoe started, let's continue on with a little bit of high temperature brake lubricant. The areas that you want to lubricate are the raised areas that you can see on the backing plate. You're going to have 3 areas along the back side here, and then you're going to have 3 along the forward side. Now, once you have all 6 of those done, we're going to continue on. We'll go right up here to the wheel cylinder, and then all the way down at the bottom where those shoes are going to sit. All this is going to help with vibration dampening and noise reduction overall. Now, once we have everything lubricated along the backing plate, let's move along to the adjuster. Now, I started talking to you about this, and you remember that this threaded area threads into here. We're going to go ahead and completely unscrew that. Now let's go ahead and grab onto the other side. We're going to take that apart as well. Now at this point, we're going to completely clean everything, paying special attention to any threaded area. The threaded areas are very important for the adjustment of your rear brakes. Once everything's fully cleaned up, let's continue with some lubricant. I'm going to use some of that high temperature caliper lube for this. You could also use some copper never sees. Now let's take this and we're going to screw it right in here, almost all the way to the very end. Now I'm going to apply some lubricant to this other side. If you were to look at this, you can see it has a little flippy-do that kind of protrudes out towards my index finger. You want to have that so it lines up with the groove on this piece right here. Looking at the other side, you can see it looks a little bit different. Longer and flatter, this side's a little smaller for that little piton. Now we can get this back in the vehicle. Let's use a little bit more of that brake lubricant. I'm going to come right along this area here. And then I like to just work it into place. That's going to help lubricate this entire area. Now let's take it and swing it up so it connects onto the wheel cylinder. Put this in place as close as possible. Now that I have my rearward shoe held in place, I'm going to continue on with my forward shoe and my metallic spring. I'm going to put the center over the center little piton. Now that I have it over that, I'm going to continue on. At this point, I'm going to grab onto the metallic spring, give it a little tug. I'm going to try to line it up here. At the same time as I try to line up that spring, I'm going to try to line up the wheel cylinder with this area. And of course, make sure this is in proper position as well behind the spring. Now, once you feel as though you have the spring in the proper position, you need to double check it. It's very important to make sure it's completely situated. You want to make sure it's inside of each of the shoes. Also, it's extremely important to make sure it's also perfectly situated inside this area. If it pops out of any of these areas while you're driving down the road, you're not going to have good braking. Now it's going to be time to deal with the adjuster. Pay attention to the rearward side. The rearward side has 2 different slots. It's very important to pay attention to that. The wider slot is going to go around the e-brake mechanism and around the shoe, right around this area. The other aspect, the smaller little cutout, is going to be for the adjuster. At this point, the next thing that I always like to do is try to adjust this out as far as I can without trying to push out the shoes. Essentially, I just want to make sure that there isn't a whole bunch of extra movement while I continue. Now the next thing we're going to do after we've given this a quick inspection is to continue on by cleaning up the mating surface of the hub where the brand new drum is going to ride. Now let's move along to putting on this piece right here. If you were to look at it, you can see that it has a little hooked area that needs to fit over this. Also, if you were to look at the adjuster, you can see that it has the slot where the rest of this needs to fit into. Let's go ahead and put this in position. You can tell I have it over the little piton there, and then I have it in the area that's going to fit into the slot on the adjuster. So now that I have this on here, you can tell that I'm over my little piton there, and I'm inside of the adjuster. Let's go ahead and follow that adjuster down towards where the adjustment wheel is. I want to show you this real quick. You remember when we put this together, we had the small little area that fits into the small slot. You want to make sure that's facing outward. If it's facing the other direction, it's going to have a big piece right here that's going to block this spring. Now we can go ahead and install this spring. Let's pay attention to this side. You can see that it has a little hooked area. That's going to fit into this area of the forward shoe. The other side of the spring, with the loop, is going to fit right over this area. Let's go ahead and get this in place. Now, as you can see, I have nothing hitting up against this spring right here blocking it, and everything's free and clear so I can make my adjustment as needed. Now I'm just going to double check everything to make sure everything's perfectly seated all the way around. Now let's put some copper never sees on our hub mating surface. Before we put our drum on there, I want to talk to you about the adjustment for your rear brakes. To adjust it, you're going to come right to this area, but you're going to come through from the back side. On the back of the backing plate, there's a little rubber boot that you can go ahead and take off of there, come on through with a screwdriver, and you should be able to adjust this. Now, when you adjust it, go with the assumption I'm coming from the back side here. All you want to do is just carefully get on this, and you're going to start spinning it so you listen to clicking. Every time you hear a click, it's going to be adjusting these shoes out a little bit. If you find that you over adjust it and you can't really spin the drum very much, or it feels like it's under resistance, you're going to have to de-adjust this. To do that, you're going to turn it in the opposite direction, but what you'll find is this area right here will make it so it does not want to de-adjust. So what you're going to have to do is come from the back side with a 90-degree pick like this, and you're just going to go ahead and push that away. I'll show you real quick. Now let's go ahead and clean down the inside of our brand new drum. All right, once you have that clean, we can go ahead and get this on the vehicle. While we're doing this, we can also do our pre-adjustment for this. So all I'm going to do is take my drum, I'll put it right over my studs and over the shoes. Now at this point, I'm going to carefully press it up against here as hard as I can, and I'm going to try to spin it. I'm trying to listen to see if I can hear any noise. Right there, I can hear a little bit of drag, but it doesn't feel like there's very much drag. The important thing about drag is the more drag you have, the more heat you're going to create. So if you try to grab onto this and you try to turn it, it's very stiff like this. Well, obviously that's going to be no good. It's going to create drag, it's going to create a lot of heat, and you're going to have some serious issues. If that was the case, you just want to de-adjust it a little bit. All you have to do is just go ahead and take off your drum a couple times, on and off, and you can do your pre-adjustment. After that, once the drum's on and the wheel's on, you're going to continue on with your regular adjustment from the back, as I told you. Once you've finished making your adjustments, go ahead and reinstall your rubber protective plug. Now, once you have everything put back together, just double check your work. You want to make sure everything's functioning as it needs to do. Of course, like I keep saying, when you do any of this, you're going to want to make sure you do the exact same thing on the other side of the vehicle. At this point, we're ready to start putting on our wheels. We'll put this up into place, start on all 4 of our 19mm lug nuts. We'll bottom them out and then get the wheel back on the ground so we can torque it to manufacturer's specification. Now with the wheels safely back down on the ground, let's continue on to torquing each of our 4 19mm lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Of course, if you have a hubcap of some sort, you're going to want to put that on now. The areas to pay attention to would be the area for the valve stem. You want to find that on your wheel. That's the area that air gets put in. Let's go ahead and line that up. Once you have that lined up, the lug nuts should line up with their corresponding covers as well. Now we'll just tighten these up so the hubcap doesn't rattle while we're driving down the road. Okay friends, we got one side of the brakes done. Of course, like I said, you're going to have to do the exact same thing to the other side of the vehicle. The process will be the exact same. After that, go ahead and pump up the brakes till they're nice and firm. You want to make sure they're firm. Make your way under the hood, double check that brake fluid. If it looks like it's a little bit low, just top it off with some .3 brake fluid. Close the hood, take it for a road test. Thanks for watching.